بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم آمين. وبعد. We continue with سفينة النجاة by Imam Sheikh Salim al-Hadrami rahimahullah ta'ala. We're on the chapter of Tahara, purification. And we spoke about the signs of puberty last time, and we also spoke about the ahkam al-shar'iyya, the laws, the categories of Islamic law, or the types of Islamic law. Today, the author, rahimahullah, he starts speaking about the conditions for using a stone to clean the private parts. And so this is interesting. Somebody might say, why a stone? In Arabic, it's called al-istijmar. During the time, and just generally in the past, and especially in Arabia, when people went to relieve themselves, they would at times not have water available. And this even happens today. Sometimes a person might be camping or something, and they might be in a place where they don't have water available to clean themselves. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he gave the Sahaba, he taught them how to clean themselves when using the restroom, when relieving themselves, and the proper way of doing it and the requirements of it and so on and so forth. Somebody might say, one of the mushrikeen, or in the early, during the time of Sahaba, they said, your deen, they make kind of a ridicule or a joke, like, your deen teaches you everything, even how to use the restroom, right? And they looked at it as somewhat, inferior. I forgot the exact story, but they were trying to make it look like, what kind of deen is this? What kind of deen teaches people how to use the bathroom? And, and the beauty of our deen is that it's actually a blessing, that it gives us guidance in every aspect of our life. What they thought to be a flaw is actually a sign of the beauty of this deen. That it's a complete way of life. That we are taught how to use the restroom, from the basics of using a restroom, to how to run a government, and how to conduct yourself in war, and how to be a family man. And then how, there's a national kind of level, right? And then there's that community, on a community level, the obligations you have, the rights of your community, the rights of Muslim over another Muslim. And then you have the individual or the family level. It teaches us the rights of spouses and children and so on, and parents. And then on an individual level, and it teaches us even when it comes to physical purity, Islam covers every aspect of life. And this is one of the beauty of Islam that is really unmatched, and there's no religion or law that can be that can compare to Islam. And so just something to appreciate, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us huda, has given us guidance. So going back to I don't recall that story, but I'll try to look it up and inshallah share it another night. But going back to this hukum, so in the past, Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Arab of the past, when they would need to use the restroom, they would use rocks to wipe themselves. Trees weren't common in the Arabian desert, so if water wasn't available, the only kind of solid object they can use to purify themselves was rocks. And so that is where the title of the chapter comes from, the conditions of using a stone. Now, the title is only being used because that is what was common in Arabian, with the Arabs during that time. But in different cultures, it could be different things. So today, in the modern world, toilet papers take the place of rocks. Right? It's a dry object that people use in replace of water or in combination with water. Other times, like we said, people might be in the woods, they might use leaves. And so the leaves have the same ruling. And then so somebody uses a dry object, in replace of water or in combination with water. And this is permissible. The author, he says this is fine as long as you meet 8 conditions. And so we'll read over these conditions, inshallah ta'ala, quickly. Before we read about the conditions, actually, I'll have some comment afterwards, inshallah. The conditions for using a rock or toilet paper. Can a Muslim use toilet paper when cleaning himself at the restroom? The hukum is yes, without any water. A person goes to relieve themselves from urine or feces, right? Stool or urine. A person can simply, instead of using water, they can take toilet paper, wipe themselves, get up, and go pray their salah. They are tahir. There's no najasa on them. And this is something all the madhahib agreed upon. To a lot of Muslims, it's foreign because we're so used to water. And that is the sunnah, to use water. But think of it as that's the first hukum, or that's actually option 2. Option 1 is to use to wipe and then to wash. So the most complete form of cleansing oneself after using the restroom is to wipe first, after wiping, then to wash. That is the most complete and the most purifying way and the most preferred way stated by our scholars. The second level is to wash. And that's kind of what is most common within Muslim societies and the Muslim world, is children, Muslims who are learned, wash from young age. And also another reason, because toilet papers aren't as common in the Muslim world and in a lot of the smaller towns and villages as they are common in the Western world. And for that reason, toilet papers aren't popular in many small towns and villages across the world. But water is available everywhere. So everybody defaulted to water. And so that is why when people think of istinja, they're thinking of water only. But actually, no, wiping is a completely permissible option. But it is just the third option in rank. So the first option is wipe and wash. Second option is to wash. Third option is to only wipe. And so if a person wiped only, they are clean, they are pure, and they can make their salah. And this applies to both women and men, and it applies to both urine and stool. For both options, they can wipe, and that is sufficient. And so with public restrooms, we can do that. With public restrooms, we can do that. And so for those of you who are following along with the books, kind of have those ranks documented. Option 1, wiping and washing, the ranks of purification is to wipe and wash. Option 2, to wash only. Option 3 is to wipe only. And now the conditions for wiping here, the author is going to state it. The first condition is that 3 stones should be used. So there should be 3 separate wipes. If a person is wiping, they can't just wipe once and get up. They have to wipe at least 3 times. And if 3 times are not enough, then they add a 4th, but it is better to make it odd, 5. And so they are required to at least do 3, and if 3 are not enough, then they should add an odd number. They should make it 5 or 7 or 9 or so on and so forth. And so with toilet paper, same thing, right? With here, they said 3 stones. You would use 3 pieces of toilet paper or to wipe oneself. That is a minimum requirement. If a person only wipes once, it is insufficient. The second requirement is it should purify. It has to remove the najasa. It doesn't have to completely get rid of it, but it has to remove the najasa. It has to remove the najasa. If there's any small traces left, that's permissible. That's fine. Number 3, he says the impurity should not be completely dry. And so the wiping has to happen before the najasa dries. So it has to be immediate. It isn't something that you can delay. And the number 4, the impurity should not have spread out. And so this is an important condition. If a person, the wiping is only permissible if it is on the private parts. But if it reaches for example, somebody has a leakage on their thigh or their clothes, wiping is not allowed. Wiping, that's why he says the impurity should not have spread out. If it spreads beyond the point of exit, then that has to be washed. Wiping is not sufficient. Number 5, no other impurity should come upon it. If another najasa comes upon it, subhanAllah, or whatever, some blood reaches it, or something from beyond the private part, then they cannot wipe, they have to wash. So no other kind of other najasa should come upon it. Number 6, he says the impurity should not go beyond the inner buttock and the head of the penis. And that's kind of the location we said, that it should not have spread out beyond where it came from. Number 7, water should not splash onto the stone. the thing that you are wiping with has to be dry. Wiping with wet wipes is not sufficient. You are still najis. So think of it like this. So if you wiped with dry toilet paper, your wiping is valid. If you wiped with a wet toilet paper or wet wipes, you're still najis. So it has to be dry. The toilet paper has to be dry. The wiping has to be with dry objects. It cannot be with a wet object. If it is with a wet object, it is equivalent to not getting wiped at all. And so it has to be washed at that point. And so this is a very important distinction, because I know sometimes when Muslim brothers or Muslims use public restrooms, what they'll do is they grab wet toilet paper, they'll take toilet paper, moisturize it with water, and then kind of use that to wipe. And that's actually worse. That's completely invalid. So from a fiqh perspective, it is completely invalid. It doesn't purify them, and that they're still considered in a state of najasa. So this is something to be mindful of. When using public restrooms, do not use wet wipes. You either use toilet paper or you wash. There's no option of using wet wipes. It has to be wipe with a dry toilet paper or wash with water, nothing else. And if the najasa spreads beyond the point of exit, then you have to wash. There's no other option. So this is something that is important to pay attention to, in a difference that a lot of people misunderstand and misapply. And then the last, he says, the stones to be used should be pure. The stones to be used should be pure. Meaning you can't use nothing najis. You can't use nothing najis. You can't use a stone that is najis or a toilet paper that is najis. And then here in the commentary, the translator, Sheikh Abdullah al-Marbuqi, Jazallah khairan, he says, the sunnah way for using a stone, begin to wipe from front to back on the right side with the first stone. So this is the first wipe. Similarly, wipe with the left with the second, and then wipe both sides and the anus with the third. Each wiping must begin at a point on the skin that is free of impurity. So he gives details. I would say refer to the book. Here he says, number 2, it is sunnah to add an odd number of stones, either 5, 7, and so on. So if you wipe, you make it an odd number of stones. And then third, he said it is makruh to use the right hand to clean impurity. So when using the restroom, we know that it is disliked to use the right hand. When using the restroom, we clean ourselves with the left hand. And so that is the shurut of istijmar and some of the ahkam that apply, the ranks, understanding the options we have, understanding the requirements, understanding that, subhanAllah, that wet wipes are not sufficient. This is important, especially also for parents with young children who they wipe for their young children. When you wipe your child, understand that it is fine and permissible for children to be wiped with wet wipes, because that is what is common. But they're still considered najis. So if you pray, you can't carry that child with you. Because we know the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed with a child in his hand, or one of his grandchildren in his hand, alayhi salatu wassalam. So sometimes brothers might say, I'm just going to pray with my child in my arm. That is fine, but if that child has not been washed from their najasa, then it is not fine. You cannot carry that child in salah because they're still technically najis. And so if you wipe them or you touch that najasa, simply wiping it off your finger is insufficient. You have to wash it off. You can't wipe it off. And so this is important hukum to pay attention to when it comes to infants and toddlers, and understand how, their tahara and najasa. And if that child, jumps on you while you're praying, you're to avoid them. You're to avoid them and scoot away from them, because they're not tahir. They're not tahir. They're najis. And so those are some of the ahkam of tahara, of using the restroom. Another important ruling that I think is important to really think about when we use today modern restrooms, especially here, just kind of the standard toilets that we use today, is that if the water from the toilet, if it splashes on the thighs, that water is najis. And so if that water, a person has to be mindful. If that water splashed, then that has to be washed off. That has to be washed off. And so that also requires some mindfulness when using the restroom, because the water of the toilet is najis, and when it splashes on a person, it has to be washed off. Another ruling regarding the restroom, it is sunnah to sit. It is sunnah to sit, but permissible to stand. It is sunnah to sit and permissible to stand. Of course, this applies only to men. So for men, it is if a man was to relieve himself from urine standing, it is permissible. There's no sin. If a person used the urinal and they relieve themselves standing, it is permissible. The only shart is they have to wipe 3 times after they urinate. Because wiping is required for both urine and stool. It isn't just for stool. So if a person did use a urinal or they did urinate standing, the only requirement is that they wipe 3 times after doing so. And then also make sure they're cautious to not get any najasa on their clothes, right? Because oftentimes when with non-Muslims, they don't wipe; they'll just zip up their pants and go, and there might be drops of najasa. As Muslims, if a Muslim does stand, although that's allowed, there are some etiquettes that have to be followed. And so one of that is to wipe 3 times, and then another one is to make sure the najasa doesn't get on the clothes or the skin or anything of that sort. It has to remain at the point of exit. So that's kind of the end of that, inshallah. We're going to get into the pillars of wudu real quickly and then conclude. Any questions about these masail? Karana? Zubair, we're good? Yeah, the brothers, if you have any questions, tafaddal. We'll take.
I also need to know the water in the toilet. Or we flush a few times a week. Can we use that water to clean?
Yep. Actually, one of our scholars, he mentioned that. So he said, if you ever fall in a predicament where, let's say you don't have water and you need to wash yourself, you don't have the option to wipe. He said if a person was to flush the toilet water and get clean toilet water, that clean toilet water can be used to clean oneself. So that is also permissible, and that has been, I've heard it from one of our mashayikh, mentioning it as an option. And so that is kind of an extreme option, right? If a person is in a difficult situation and they don't have water in hand, and wiping isn't an option or it's not available, then what do? You can flush the toilet maybe once or twice until you get clean water, and then you can use that water to clean oneself. And so that is permissible, and it is an option. And so yes, that's permissible. Thank you for bringing that up. Jazakallah khair. Yes.
How about you see the najasa get in your clothes? When you have no water, the time to pray, so what do?
So if the najasa got on your clothes, you are obligated to wash your clothes.
How about no water?
If there's no water available, then you are obligated to change your clothes. If you cannot change your clothes, let's say you're in a position where you're not able to find and change your clothes, and salah time is entering and you don't have time, you're going to miss the salah time, then in that case you pray in your state. But this is after exerting all effort. So you made the effort, first of all, okay, the najasa got on my clothes, go to the gas station, grab a bottle of water, because you don't have to change your whole clothes. Najasa got on that single spot, grab it, pour some water on it, khalas, you're tahir, right? So you don't have to change the entire clothes, but so you just wash that spot. But if none of these options are possible, you don't have the option to wash, or changing your drawers, maybe you can take off your underwear if your underwear is najis and you pray without the underwear. So all of these options have to be pursued before a person prays with najasa on their clothes. Wallahu a'lam. Does that help? Does that clarify? Yeah, Sheikh, tafaddal.
No, it's the same question.
Same question? Yeah. So if the najasa gets on you, then either wash it, grab a simple water bottle, and just pour it. Let's say it got on your shirt or your pants or whatever. See the spot that it got on. You simply pour some water on it. Khalas, kifaya. That's it. You go pray yourself. Because the clothes is tahir. It's just that spot is najis. So the whole clothes is not najis. We just find the spot that got the najasa. You make an estimate, a judgment, roughly where you think the najasa reached. You pour water around that area to make sure the water is off, and then that's khalas. Then that clothes is tahir now.
If you had splash, from the urinal or something,
Uh-huh.
you can't really know.
Yeah, if the splash if it's a large amount of najasa where it's splashed on your clothes or something, then at that point you would change your clothes. And if you're in a position to do so. So and that can be simply like if you're stopping by a nearby, if you're in the city limits, it shouldn't be impossible. Because you can just stop at a nearby Walmart or Fred Meyer's or something and just grab, an extra set of jeans or something and just do that, right? So you are supposed to, if you have the means and you can afford it, then yes, you're supposed to change your clothes. If you don't have the option of washing it. But if a person doesn't have the financial means, and there's nothing available for them to buy at that time, salah time is leaving them, then they pray in their situation. Because to abandon salah is a major sin. So we can't simply abandon salah and be like, oh, I'm najis, I'm not going to pray. Right, that's a major sin. So you still have to pray. And the majority of scholars say, although you still have to pray, you have to make up that salah. So although they say, even if you were unable to remove the najasa, you pray in your current state, and you exerted all your efforts, you weren't able to find something to change into, you weren't able to wash it, it's too much, you pray your salah in your current state, being najis, make sure you make wudu and everything, And then later on, when you are able to become tahir and change out of that clothes, you make up that salah or those salawat that you prayed with impurity on you.
So when you take a shower, you
No.
can make it wudu in the shower, right?
Yes, wudu in the shower is permissible. Wudu in the shower is completely permissible. It's actually sunnah to take your wudu when doing your ghusl. Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ, when he would do his ghusl, he would take his wudu before taking his, washing his full body. And so we'll talk about that. Here, this last masail that I wanted to get into were the pillars of wudu, or the arkan of wudu. So the author, rahimahullah, he says, فَصْلٌ فُرُوضُ الْوُضُوءِ سِتَّةِ. He says, the obligatory acts of wudu are 6. So there are 6 arkan of wudu. Wudu has 6 pillars that you have to do. Everything else is sunnah. A lot of us, we're not aware, but today inshallah, we'll learn some new information. The first one is you have to have niyyah. And according to the madhahib, predominantly they say niyyah means that you consciously bring to mind, I am making wudu right now. So you have to make that intention consciously. You have to be mindful of your intention at the time of performing your wudu. Intention. Number 2 is ghaslul wajh, is to wash the face. So the face, the definition of the face is hairline to chin. If a person is bald, where the average hairline begins, right? And so I myself have lost some hair, right? So it wouldn't begin at where my hair is, but it's like where the average hairline begins, all the way to below the chin, below the jawbone. And then from ear to ear. So the definition of the face is not, a lot of people, they wash up to their sideburn. And that is not your face. That isn't the whole face. The entire face is ear to ear. So you have to get your sideburns and you have to get the skin right before your ear. And then from hairline, the average hairline, to below the chin. So that is what the face is. What does this mean? The author, he didn't mention wiping the hands, washing the hands 3 times. He didn't mention rinsing the mouth or rinsing the nose. Those acts are all sunnah. Because right now he's only mentioned the obligations of wudu. These are only the fara'id. What is his basis for this? He's basing it off the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Allah says, O you who believe, when you stand for prayer, wash your face. The ayah did not say wash your mouth, wash your hands, wash your nose. So that's mentioned in that hadith. So those scholars, they said, the ayah is telling us the minimum wudu is to make intention, wash the face. And then the 3rd pillar is to wash both hands and arms. So he said hands, arms, including the elbows. So when washing the arm, you have to start above the elbow, all the way to the fingers. Even if you wash your hand in the beginning. Some people, they think, I wash my hand in the beginning, do I have to wash it again when I do my arms? You do. If you don't, your wudu is invalid. Because this is a fard. This is a pillar of wudu. So when washing the arms, it has to begin from above the elbow. From above the elbow, or begin from the hand, going all the way to above the elbow. Right, so that's kind of the full wudu of the arm. Washing anything less than that invalidates the wudu. I've seen often people will roll their sleeve, and if their sleeve is kind of tight, they'll leave it here at the elbow, right? And that invalidates your wudu. Because the elbow has to be washed. You're not supposed to stop at the elbow. You're supposed to wash the elbow, including the elbow.
So how about this one? He's stuck like here.
If it's stuck, then you would have to take it off. You would have to take it off, wash above the elbow. Otherwise, if you don't wash above the elbow, the wudu is invalid. The wudu doesn't count. So you wash the hands, arms, elbow included. All 3 have to be washed together for the validity of wudu. If you skip the nose, you skip the mouth, you skip the hands, your wudu is okay. But if you skip the elbow, your wudu is invalid. So that's why the author, the fuqaha, when they teach us ibadah and ahkam, they don't teach us do it step by step. What they do, the ulama, is they tell you wajibat, they tell you the sunan. They separate the two. They don't give you kind of instructions. This is how you do wudu. This is how you do ghusl. They tell you, no, here are the obligations, here are the sunnahs. So that when you know, okay, which are the things that I have to get right, and which are the things that I should try to do. If I don't do it, there's no sin. That's how the scholars of fiqh typically write their books of law. They don't give you a description, they give you rulings. And then you apply. And the mashayikh, the teachers are the ones that give you description. And the teachers are the ones that go and they actually demonstrate. Many of our mashayikh, when you would learn this chapter, They would go to the restroom, and maybe we get the chance, we can do the same. They would go to the restroom and they would actually demonstrate how to do the wudu step by step. But the books of fiqh don't do that. The books of fiqh, they give you the ahkam. They give you wajibat and sunan. So regarding the arm, we said hand, arm, elbow. All three must be washed. If the sleeves are tight, take it off. You have to take it off and you have to wash the elbows, otherwise that wudu is invalid. The fourth hukum is wiping some of the head. Wiping any part of the head. مَسْحُ شَيْءٍ مِنَ الرَّأْسِ. And so in the Shafi'i school, you only have to wipe part of your head. The Hanafi school, I believe they say 1/3. So no, majority of the scholars, you don't have to wipe the entire head. The wipe the entire head is sunnah. The wajib is you just have to wipe part of your head. So in many Shafi'i cultures and in countries, you'll find that they'll take some water and just like put it under their head and touch it like that, and that's it. That's how they wipe their head, and that's sufficient. So that's valid. It's sahih. It's not the sunnah way. The sunnah way is to take your hand all the way back and bring it forward. That's the sunnah way. Here we're not talking the sunnah way. We're talking about the wajib. So that's the difference here. So we want to make sure we get that distinction. The wajib is you wipe part of your head. If you did that, your wudu is valid. Number 5 is غسل الرجلين مع الكعبين. Washing the feet including the ankles. So washing the feet including the ankles is a fard. Again, just like the elbows, you have to wash above the ankles. If you wash to the ankle, the wudu is invalid. It has to be above the ankle for the validity of the wudu. Otherwise, the wudu is invalid. A mistake that people often make, especially people who rush through their wudu. You know, some people, subhanAllah, they make their wudu in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, really fast. They often leave parts of their limbs dry. Once that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. A man made wudu, his heel was dry. The Prophet ﷺ noticed. He said, وَيْلُ لِلْعَقَابِ مِنَ النَّارِ. He said, woe to the heels from the fire. So washing the wudu improperly puts a person in danger of being burned by the fire. Because there's a hadith, the fire will not burn the limbs of sujood. Or there's a narration of that meaning, the fire will not burn the limbs of sujood. So if a person is not washing a limb properly, then they are putting their self at the risk of having that limb burned by the fire. And so it's very, very important that wudu is a ibadah. So when we make our wudu, we're not, super speed, this is just something quick. No, we do it slowly, we do it correctly, we make sure we wash all the limbs correctly, especially the ones we mentioned. The face, the arms, with the elbows, with the hand, the wiping part of the head, and washing the 2 feet, including the ankles. You cannot make a mistake with these. If there's any mistake made with these, the wudu does not count. It is equivalent to praying without wudu. And so that is important to understand. And then the last, he says, at-tartib, the order. So you have to wash the face first, the arms, wipe the head, wash the feet. The tartib is wajib. It isn't sunnah. You have to make sure you follow this order. Now there are many sunnahs. The commentator shares, and we'll read through them. We'll probably save it for tomorrow night, inshallah ta'ala, because the sunnahs are going to be, there's a lot of them, inshallah ta'ala, which we'll share tomorrow night. But those are the 6 pillars of wudu, and that is based on the ayah of the Quran. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا رؤوسكم وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين. So the ayah, what does it mean? It's in Surah Al-Ma'idah, 2nd page of Al-Ma'idah. It says, 3rd page of Al-Ma'idah. All you who believe, if you stand for prayer, wash your face, wash your arms to the elbow, wipe your heads and your feet. So those are the wajibat. The ayah did not mention 3 times. It didn't mention the nose, the mouth. It didn't mention doing the hair back and forth. None of that. So the scholars, they said the ayah, it gave us the wajibat of wudu. The ahadith gives us the sunnah. And so inshallah ta'ala, we'll read a lot of the sunnahs tomorrow night. And so when we mention these, this includes that 3 times is also sunnah. He didn't mention 3 times. So if the minimum wajib, right now you say Bismillah. Bismillah is sunnah too. You make your intention, you're making wudu, you take water, you wash your face. You wash your arm, you wash your other arm, with your hand and elbow, of course. Wipe part of your head, wash your right feet, left feet, you have wudu, you can go pray salah.
Just one time?
Just one time. Your wudu is valid. If you have a little bit of water, just do that. Yeah, does it make sense? If you don't have a lot of water available, that's it. That's all you do. If you are sick, maybe you don't want to touch too much water or something, just one time. If the time of prayer is leaving you, maybe you woke up the last 10 minutes before Fajr and time is going. Just do the minimum and go pray your salah. So there are times where it's useful to know the minimum. Because when sometimes you don't have the option of, you don't have the water or you don't have the time then, or the capability, then you can just use the minimum. Wallahu alam. Some of this, I remember one of my mashayikh said, if you're late to the masjid and you're going to miss the jama'ah, do the minimum. Because jama'ah is more important than the sunnahs of wudu. So he says, skip all the sunnahs of wudu, just do the wajib so you can get the reward of the jama'ah. So even in that, I remember one of our mashayikh, he mentioned that. So these are options, right? So we're not saying we want to always do the sunnah, but there might be cases where we can only do we can only do the wajib. So in those cases, we take advantage of the wajibat. Karana, you have a question?
Yeah, see, make intention for wudu, but this is dhuhr prayer. Do we have the intention for that too, or
for dhuhr, for salah?
Yeah.
Yes, you have to have intention for salah as well. Yeah, and this is the majority of the scholars. That is their perception of intention. They say intention has to be made at the beginning of each ibadah. At the beginning of each ibadah, intention has to be consciously made. This sometimes leads to waswas. Sometimes this leads to waswas, where a person is like, did I make intention? Did I not make intention? So we don't want that to happen. If a person finds himself making waswas, ignore that and just pray your salah. But so we don't want, in the case of waswas, we don't want that, because sometimes people do fall into that. But what we want to get in the habit is, before we make our salah, we bring our intention to mind, and then we say Allahu Akbar. So there has to be we calm our mind for a moment, relax our mind, but be a little mindful. What salah I'm praying, and then you pray your salah. So you have to do that for wudu, you have to do it for salah, you have to do it for fasting as well. The only thing with fasting is, a lot of the scholars, they adopt the Maliki school. The Maliki school says for fasting, you can make the intention for the whole month at the beginning of the month. So a lot of the ulama, they say, take this opinion as an ease. They say, you want to make your intention every night, but if you forget, take the opinion of Imam Malik. Imam Malik, he says, you can make intention for the whole Ramadan at the beginning of the month, as long as your fasting wasn't interrupted. If you broke your fast one of those days, then you have to reset your intention. So that's an opinion in fasting, that you can do it for the whole month. Other than that, the fuqaha generally, they say each ibadah needs intention that is made mindfully at the beginning of the ibadah. At the beginning of the ibadah. Wallahu a'lam. And actually there's a section, the next section, the author, rahimahullah, he's going to actually mention the categories of intention. So inshallah we'll read that a bit.
Some brother need a book.
Yeah, brothers, if you don't have the book, we have it. I have actually copies, so inshallah we can purchase it from the masjid.
If you're in a place without no water, what do you do?
If you have no water, that's tayammum. You wipe with dirt.
How do you do tayammum?
Tayammum, you say Bismillah, you wipe once, you wipe your face, you wipe once, you hit the dust once, and then you wipe your hands. That's it. Yeah, so that's easy. That's tayammum.
You have to pay back when you get water.
No, you don't. So that is a different method. Do you have to make up the salah? You don't. According, wallahu alam, to the opinion that I follow and many of our mashayikh followed, is that no. Because if you were sick, and you have a fever, and you can't touch water, then you just do tayammum. Because you're sick. You touch the water, it's going to make your fever worse. You're going to probably shiver. So you just make tayammum. Although there's water in the house, right? So you can make tayammum, and which we'll read for illness. Or you can make tayammum for travel. If you're traveling or you're somewhere there's no water available, then you can make tayammum.
Let's say you didn't take, let's say you wait till 10 minutes from the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have get ready before, but you wait till like the last 5 minutes?
No, if you did tayammum because of your shortcoming, then you have to make up that salah.
Because, if you know you may not have water, maybe
You have to go buy it. So just because there's no water at your house, it doesn't mean that you can just do tayammum. I remember there was a masala when we were studying in Yemen. There was a time we lived on a big university campus. The campus was, university campuses are significantly large. We were out of water in the Jami'ah and I think some neighboring areas, but there was water available beyond that. So there was a debate. Do we have to travel like a couple miles to buy water or not. And so there's that mas'ala. How far do you have to go search for water? And do you have to spend, or can you, especially students, they're financially limited and so on. So how about if you don't have the means to buy it? So if you have the means and you're able to go get it, you have to. But if there are situations where maybe you can't, then, or the distance is too far, or you can't afford it, or something, or you need the water for, maybe it's during a time of drought or something, and people need whatever water they have for, living and drinking, then you do tayammum in that case. If you're sick, then khalas, the availability of water doesn't matter, because you're sick in that situation. So you just simply make tayammum, and you pray your salah with your tayammum. Allahu a'lam. We're gonna get to the tayammum. Well, how do you make wudu? The airplanes have water. So airplanes have water. Huh? Hospital? If you're sick? If you can get up, you have to go. If you can't go, somebody has to do wudu for you.
Or they bring stone for you.
Yeah. No, somebody has to do wudu. Before you do tayammum, you have to get somebody to do wudu for you. There's ahkam about that.
Somebody can do
Wudu yes. They can wash your limbs and so on, and they can, they can do wudu. So if you're in the hospital and you had a procedure or something and you can't get up, then somebody does wudu for you for salah. You combine dhuhr, asr, maghrib, isha, and fajr. So you make 3 salah. But if they can't touch the water, they do dirt. If there's no dirt available, like they're in a hospital, for example, there's no dirt or anybody to bring them dirt, then in that case, there's 2 opinions to the scholars. One is that they pray without anything. They just make salah. And they have to make up that salah when they're able. Easy. Yeah. So, does that make sense? I think there's a question here about the 2 brothers here.
What kind of dirt? I mean, is it just soil?
It has to be soil. So that's also another topic, is what kind of dirt? Does it apply to all natural objects like trees and rocks, or does it have to be soiled like dirt with, that's... Yeah, so because it have to be dry. So all of these are masail. Inshallah, we'll talk about when the time comes. But we're jumping ahead. We're jumping ahead. So inshallah, we'll get to those masail.
How about people who have socks, they make it wudu, they just make it like that, that's it?
With the socks, we'll talk about the wiping of the socks probably tomorrow night.
They go just like that.
Inshallah, come to tomorrow night's dars, and then we'll talk about the remainder ahkam of the wudu, and the ruling of wiping the socks and so on, inshallah. We'll get into those issues tomorrow night, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum.